Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another Raw review. All right, Raw today was pretty. It was mid. Um, it wasn't too bad. It was a lot of talking and a lot of commercials and stuff. The matches, there were only four matches, and they were supposed to be could be long, but they were short. Due to a lot of talking. But anyway, let's start out. We have Oba Femi. He comes out. You know. He's liking the response of the crowd. He's telling the crowd, "Hey, that's cool. I like it and everything. But let's get down to business." You know, saying that him and Paul Heyman, they don't agree on a lot of things, but one thing that do agree on, he says Paul Heyman doesn't believe in predictions and everything. He believes in spoilers. And then Oba is saying that he does too and stuff. And then he saying that he will win the King of the Ring, and anybody that's in his way, that they're gonna get beat the crap down and stuff, And he said that's not a prediction, that's a spoiler, saying that he's the ruler and the ruler needs a crown, to be ruler. So he said that he needs to sit on his throne and be the king and stuff, and as the ruler, And then he's saying that in 2026, you know, is the year for collecting trophies. And he said that there's only one trophy that it doesn't have, and that's the head of, Brock Lesnar and everything. He said, it's bad that Brock Lesnar wasn't there tonight and stuff like that. So he started talking about Brock Lesnar and how Brock Lesnar, attacked him and stuff and everything, blindsided him, gave him 4 F5s and stuff like that and stuff. And then he said, Brock is a cheater and everything. He can't do anything honest. He needs help to win. He says, and Brock Lesnar, all he sees is the big bad B. After Paul Heyman said that Oba, you know, um, opened up, the beast. And then Brock says, hey, look, the only thing he sees in Brock Lesnar, all he sees is a big bad B. And then Dominic Mysterio comes out, calling over a rookie and saying how long he's been in the business and stuff like that. He says he's been there as long as a cup of coffee or whatever, and he's saying that Dom is saying that, he's been in the business, he's a vet, he's been in the game for 20 years and stuff like that, and that he's going to win King of the Ring and he's going to rule over, Obama family. And he told Oba Femi to bend the knee, and then JD McDonough sneaks up behind Oba and he hits Oba with the chair, and it doesn't phase Oba, and then Oba turns around. JD McDonough goes to try to hit him with the chair again. Oba punches the chair, and he takes out JD McDonough. And as he's reaching for JD McDonough through the ropes, Dom hits Oba with a 619. Oba backs up and everything, and then Dom is about ready to go do a frog splash and everything, and Oba catches him and stuff. And when he catches him, he throws him across the ring. And as he was about ready to go get him, JD McDonough pulls Dom out of the ring. And then Oba says that, he knows that Ray, is his father. But next week, he's going to introduce Dom to his daddy. So Dominic is about ready to get destroyed and stuff. Then we got Jackie talking to Seth Rollins, and he's, she's asking him about the vision and stuff like that, since they, he did beat Braun Breaker, in Clash in Italy. So he's saying that, the vision is about behind him and stuff like that, talking about he's going to win the King of the Ring so he can face Roman Reigns and get back the title that he never lost and stuff like that. As we know that Seth Rollins was the winner of that title that Roman has. He was the first. He was the first champion to get that belt, at least that design of that belt and stuff. But anyway, he's saying that he's gonna go and he's gonna take that title that he never lost from Roman Reigns. After he wins the King of the Ring, because that title belongs to him. And then we get the women's Queen of the Ring. First round we have Alexa Bliss, Chelsea Green, Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan. The match was okay, a little sloppy, but it was okay. And then around the ending, Alexa gets her sister Abigail to live, and then Becky grabs Alexa, and then she puts her in the manhandle slam, and then Chelsea Green, she Unpretty's Becky Lynch, and then Liv comes back and she rolls Chelsea Green up for the 1, 2, 3, and Liv Morgan wins the first round. Then we have Chad Gable. He's back there talking to Penta, saying how sorry he was for the things that he did and everything. He was upset, with Penta and everything when he attacked him, because he lost to Penta, when Penta, debuted and stuff like that. Chad Gable, I believe, was the one that he beat in his debut match. And then we got Seth Rollins talking to Montez Ford and everything. And then the Usos come out and everything, telling Seth to keep the family name out of his mouth and stuff like that. And then Jay's talking about going on, win the King of the Ring so he can fight Cody Rhodes and win that title and stuff. And then Seth, goes and says, "Hey, Jimmy, what about you and stuff? What are you gonna do and stuff like that?" Because Roman called him back last week when he told Jay to go out and win King of the Ring so he can face Cody, and they both have the title, the world titles and stuff like that. And then Jay tells Jacob to get Seth, and then Jacob looks at Seth. They face look at each other in the face and everything, and then Jacob just walks away and stuff. And then we get the match with Lyra Valkair and so Ruka for the women's IC title and everything. The match, it was okay. It was a pretty good match. It went on back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Lyra Valkyria is going for the title because, the stipulation when Becky had it is that Lyra Valkyria could not go back for that title as long as Becky had it. So Becky lost to Sol Ruka, and so Lyra gets a shot, at Sol Ruka's title. So Ruka hits the Soul Snatcher and she wins. It stays and remains as IC title, as IC champion. Then we have Jimmy J, you know, um, telling Jacob that he needs to listen and everything. And when he's told to do something, to actually do it. And then Jacob says, "Look, I acknowledge, Roman Reigns, as his tribal chief. He didn't acknowledge them, Jimmy or Jay, and stuff." And then tells them to watch, that they need to watch out for LA Knight because LA Knight has been going around, talking about, the bloodline or the family business and stuff like that. And they're not doing anything about it. And then you got LA Knight heading out to the ring and everything. When he gets in the ring, they threw the mic in. He missed the mic. He dropped it. Then he's talking about the King of the Ring and everything, saying that, if he wins and everything, that he's going to go and face Roman Reigns, for the title. But then he says that Roman's empire is falling apart and everything, saying that he doesn't take orders from Roman Reigns and stuff like Jimmy and Jay and Jacob do. And he said basically saying that he's his own man, and he's basically saying that um, even if he did face Roman for the title, that Roman couldn't win it cleanly because he'll always need help, from the Usos or for somebody else from the bloodline and everything. And then he started talking about Adam Pearce and started saying that Adam Pearce, isn't fair either because Adam Pearce, got on LA Knight last week, and then for the same thing, he got on Roman Reigns, but the way he was saying the way that he talked to him, LA Knight saying the way that Adam Pearce talked to him, it wasn't the same way that he talked to Roman Reigns, and said that there was favoritism and stuff like that. And then out comes Jay and Jay Uso, and he's telling LA Knight, stay in his lane and stay out of the family business and stuff like that. And you know, that he can win and do things on himself. So Jay is saying that he can go win the King of the Ring and challenge Cody and win the belt. Because he's saying that he doesn't need help from anybody, to do that. And then he tells LA Knight, "Look, keep our family out of your mouth," and he tells him, "Hey, this is a warning shot," and he does like a gun thing. And then LA Knight tells Jay Uso, "Hey, screw your family, screw you and your family." And then Jay tries to run to the ring. Jimmy cuts him off, and tells him, to stop. And so that's over. And then we get another backstage with Chad Gable talking to Rey Mysterio, and Rey is telling Chad, to go back further. He's apologizing for the things that he's done now as far as learning how to be a luchador and how that works and stuff. But he said before you put the mask on, go back and look at how you were, before you donned the mask. And that's where you should go and then apologize from there. Then we get the match with Penta and Rey Mysterio. The match was pretty good. It was excellent, as far as, two luchadors and stuff like that, were together. And then Penta ends up winning with the Mexican Destroyer. Then Ethan Page and Rusev comes out, and they attack both Penta and Mysterio. They take them out, and then all of a sudden, Dragon Lee comes out. He starts trying to take out Ethan Page and Rusev, but then they end up taking him out and everything. And then Rusev pulls the mask, or Ethan Page, one of the two, pulls the mask off of Rey Mysterio and stuff. And then um, Chad Gable comes out, and then Chad Gable takes out both Ethan Page and Rusev. He sees the mask. He sees the mask laying in the ring, and he sees it as raised, and he picks the mask up. He looks at it, and then he hands the mask to Penta and Rey Mysterio. I mean, not Rey Mysterio, but Penta and Dragon Lee, and they try to put the mask back on Rey Mysterio. Then Io Sky's promo is saying that that Oscar left her to take care of the women's division, and then she's telling Raquel, saying that Raquel Rodriguez and everything, that she doesn't have any honor or anything like that, and that she will beat Raquel Rodriguez next week, for at the semifinals for the Queen of the Ring. And then you got Roxanne Perez and Liv Morgan. They're talking, and Roxanne Perez is telling Liv Morgan, that that Raquel has to win, and she's congratulating Liv on the win, and she's saying that her and Raquel, if Raquel wins and everything like that, you know, um, if they face each other, how's that going to happen if Raquel, does beat Liv? But it doesn't matter because Liv is already a champion, and if Raquel wins, then she'll go on to face Rhea Ripley, and then they will have both titles, as far as championships, in the Judgment Day. And I guess that's the plan. And then Don comes in and says, "Hey, what are we going to do about Obafemi and how Obafemi did him, and what they got to go through next week when he has to face Obafemi in the semifinals? Oba's going to kill him." And then we have the men's first round match in the King of the Ring with Seth Rollins, Ricky Saints, Javon Evans, and Talatunga and everything. The match was okay. It was good. It was a pretty good match going on. But then we get the interference with Austin Theory. He pulls the referee. He pulls the referee out of the ring as Seth um, stomped on Ricky Saints and stuff. And then he gets back in the ring, and then he gets speared by Braun Breaker and stuff like that. And then Ricky Saints, kind of gets Seth Rollins, and he does his finishing move. But by that time, Javon Evans runs back into the ring because they've already taken Talatunga out. Javon Evans comes in. He saves the pin. Then he hits Ricky Saints with the OG cutter. And then he pins Ricky Saints. And Javon Evans wins the first round in the King of the Ring and stuff, which is pretty good and stuff. I kind of saw that happening, on the way how they entered it in the ring and stuff. Javon was last. He had the biggest entrance, so you figured Javon was going to probably win this match. But anyway, Raw tonight was pretty much mid and everything. Out of 10, I'm going to give it maybe a 4.5 and stuff, but it's still looking sad. But hopefully things will get better as far as Raw is concerned. I'm just hoping that it does and everything. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling. If you agree or disagree, just leave it in the comments. All right, now. Thanks for watching. God bless. Deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.